It used to be that sneakers or athletic shoes used to almost strictly be worn by athletes who are competing in an athletic event in front of a crowd. Occasionally you might see other people at other times wearing sneakers, but if you look at the footwear on this athlete, you will notice that his sneakers look nothing like the sneakers of today. This photograph must date back to probably before the 1940s, but in the 1970s there was a so-called running craze, and people began to wear sneakers more than ever, whether they ran or not, but for above all other reasons, fashion. Sneakers are actually better for your feet than most other footwear, but sneaker manufacturers saw a great opportunity to over-embellish what their shoes can do for you, how high they can make you jump or how fast they can make you run in their advertisements. Eventually, sneakers began to be manufactured with elaborate appearances to them that had nothing to do with how well they perform, how comfortable they can make you feel, or how athletic they can help you to be. Sneaker styles are always changing, and they have been changing for decades. There are so many sneakers nowadays with such bizarre, strange, even exotic appearances to them, and people take it for granted. I personally have tried some of the most advertised brands and some of the supposedly best brands of sneakers there are, and I have found them to be ordinary and not worth the price that they were. All sneaker manufacturers advertise their styles as being engineered for performance and comfort, and still you may find them to be the opposite of that. Furthermore, it seems that the main idea with making sneakers nowadays is to make them with very outlandish appearances. In this video, I'm going to review some sneaker styles, and besides the way they look, I might point out other things about their design. To begin with something, this sneaker is a very dark color. Up front it is a very dark navy blue color, and towards the back it fades to a lighter shade of blue, but it looks black mainly. Black sneakers that are completely black, are necessary. I've seen police officers wear them, but they have to look more like shoes than sneakers, or as much as possible. This looks like a sneaker. It looks like a lightweight sneaker, perhaps even one that you use to progressively train yourself to run barefoot. When it comes to the color black on sneakers, however, it has to be a color that is carefully applied or not at all. Black is the color of a dress shoe. It's the color of something formal, and sneakers are casual. Normally you wouldn't wear black socks with lighter colored sneakers or with white sneakers. So if you wore black sneakers with white socks, it would be like a mismatch of clothing styles. This sneaker is of a good brand. I have tried the particular style in a different color and a different color pattern. But even with my favorite brands or the better brands, I have to try hard to find color combinations and color patterns and styles and designs that don't look as outlandish or strange or oddly color matched as others. This sneaker has bright white soles. The soles also have patches of gray and blue, but basically they are white, and I wonder why. A lot of sneaker manufacturers, a lot of sneaker companies are making their sneakers with white soles, but the soles of your shoes touch the ground, they get full of debris, chewing gum, tar, and that could happen to soles of any color, but it's going to be specifically unsightly on white soles. I avoid sneakers with white soles, not easy. These look like shoes for a clown. There's a need for sneaker manufacturers to make sneakers for people older than teenagers. There are people way past the age of 30, they're still active, or they need sneakers to be comfortable in, and they need more dignified designs than this. Also, I'd like to point out the color black, or any color similar to black, when it's next to much lighter colors or certain bright colors, it just has a tacky appearance, it has a juvenile appearance, it has a flashy appearance. To explain it a bit more, this is a photograph or a printout of two t-shirts, each which have the iconic Superman logo on it. The one on the left, the logo is outlined in black. The one on the right, the logo is not outlined at all. The one on the left looks like it's drawn out. It looks cartoonish. It looks more like it's for a costume. That besides the fact that it's on a bright blue background, which is associated with the Superman costume. The one on the right is on a plain white background. It's a visual thing. The one on the left just looks more like you would be dressed for Halloween. Also, these sneakers appear to be partially made of suede. Suede is a horrible material to use for sneakers or any kind of footwear. It fades easily, it gets stained easily, it's not easy to take care of. It's not the most rugged type of fabric to use. I don't know why any kind of shoe would be made of suede. This sneaker has a dark bumper. The bumper, of course, is that small piece of material on the front of the shoe. It makes this shoe look like part tap shoe, part athletic shoe, and the appearance is just off. A sneaker should look like a sneaker, not like a hybrid of a dress shoe and an athletic shoe. I avoid sneakers that have bumpers that are much darker than the rest of the sneaker. This sneaker looks like it might be for walking on the beach. It seems to have drainage holes on the sides of the sole. Otherwise, I don't know why those holes would be on the side. It's a bad idea. Some sneakers that are not beach shoes, that are not meant to be used on the beach, may have that type of a design. It's a bad idea. You can only get things stuck in there like sand and dirt and rocks. Also, this sneaker has a zigzagging pattern on the side. It is only slightly darker than the rest of the top of the shoe, like light gray color, while the rest of the top of the sneaker is basically white. That also is meant to give it a certain appearance. It's a modern art type of pattern. To explain it a bit more, this sneaker does not exactly have a zigzagging pattern on the side. It has triangular shapes next to each other that are at different angles and tilted towards each other at the top. And because they are outlined in a certain shade of blue, and inside each triangle the shade of blue is different. Perhaps it has even a slightly different color inside. It is still meant to give the appearance as if the sneaker is tied very tightly on the top, and it's an illusion type of thing. But if your sneakers were genuinely scrunched up on top like that, it would look bizarre. So why make them look like that? It's part of what would make it look like you are a cartoon character. And this one, with its zigzagging pattern, is a bit more of a modified appearance of the blue one that we just saw, especially up front near the nose of the sneaker. It's an eyesore. This sneaker is so white that you can hardly see it against a white background. White sneakers are not a good idea. When they start to get dirty and stained, you will notice it specifically. Perhaps if they're made of a certain material that's dirt resistant, then it might be okay. However, sneakers that are this white in color, I can only think of baby shoes and nurses' shoes. That's what it's good for. That's what it seems most appropriate for. Perhaps tennis shoes. Another thing is that this sneaker has an indentation on the side, apparently to give the illusion that it has particularly good arch support. I don't know if it works or if it's just something visual. Also, that indentation on the side, when you're walking in a park or a street, there is always something on the ground. There are always things on the ground: glass, rocks, stones, broken items. And as you walk, anything you step on, if it's beneath the sole of the shoe, it may not be a problem, but the very rim of the sole is always touching something, or eventually does. And because of the material of the sole, especially with sneakers, that will cause a bouncing action. It will cause a small object that it touches to bounce or hurl away. If the small object flies in a different direction, it won't be a problem, but when you're constantly stepping on small things on the ground, eventually that small rock, that small pebbles, that small piece of glass, that little speck of asphalt from the ground will end up inside your shoe, and that's how you often get objects inside your shoe when you're walking. It's the nature of your momentum when you're walking, and there are things on the ground. But with that indentation on the side, it's another risk factor, it's a vulnerability. Anything that bounces in that indentation, if it's a sharp object, if it's a hard object, it can injure your foot, it can become embedded in your skin. This sneaker, the way it's designed, is actually a safety hazard, or it potentially is one. You have to wonder what the sneaker manufacturer was thinking. You have to wonder what the designer was thinking. And that's something that you have to think about. This sneaker is mainly red and white. I don't like red and I don't like white as a color for sneakers. It could depend on what shade, but mostly when it comes to red and white mixed together, that reminds me of Santa Claus's suit. It looks like this sneaker is supposed to be used only on Christmas. And still, for what it is, this sneaker, the way the red and the white are together, the red is not overbearing, the white is not very intense, except for the side of the sole where those holes are, and again, those are probably drainage holes for a sneaker that's supposed to be used on the beach. Otherwise, it's just a sneaker that has holes on the side of the sole, just for style reasons. The bumper on this sneaker is also a good light color without being intensely white. The bottom sole of the sneaker is a bright red color. It's better than the bottom sole being just as intensely white as the side of the sole. So this sneaker isn't that bad. Not the best in appearance, but not so bad either. And I would say part of what makes this sneaker look decent, in spite of the fact that the color combination is not the best, is the contour of the sneaker. It just has a good shape to it. Sometimes the shape of the sneaker is a saving grace. The way that the sneaker is shaped is very important. It just follows the natural formation of the foot in a way that other sneakers don't. There will probably be other examples of this as this video goes along. This looks like a mixture of hiking shoe and a sneaker. It has a black bumper and also a black heel counter. The brightness of the yellow mixed with the black colors of the bumper, the heel counter, and the side of the sole is not a good combination as far as I'm concerned. Now this is where I get a bit more specific. This sneaker Even though I don't like the yellow color, the bright yellow color, and the dark bumper, with this, the part of the sneaker that would cover the top of your toes, that is on the front of the sneaker near the bumper. If you look, you would notice that the gray trim is in a rounded shape in that area. And as insignificant as that may be, as unnoticeable as it may be considered to be, that is something that throws off the symmetrical look of the sneaker, or the potential symmetrical look of the sneaker. Let's go back to one we already saw. Now this one, as I said, I think that it has a good contour to it. The part of the sneaker that covers your toes near the bumper, that area seems to be made of mesh material, but you can still see a stripe, an off-white colored stripe going down from near the eyelets to the bumper. And that stripe, it isn't rounded like the other one we saw. It doesn't have a rounded shape. It leads sort of straight down, basically straight down with a slight curve. That's what gives this sneaker the appearance of a good contour, like it's shaped like your foot. This one, on the other hand, that rounded gray trim, just that is what throws off the look of the sneaker. And I have avoided buying sneakers with that particular design on them. I've seen quite a few, especially of this brand, even though otherwise I happen to like this brand. Now this really looks like a clown's shoe. The sole is black, the logo is black, and the shoelaces are black. Also the tongue. When it comes to shoelaces, I think black shoelaces should almost never be on sneakers, except when the sneaker is entirely black. Black shoelaces seem like a mismatch of clothing styles. Black shoelaces are for dress shoes. Sneakers should have lighter colored shoelaces, usually. Mostly I dislike everything that this company manufactures except for a few select items. This sneaker, as much as I dislike the appearance, is one of the best sneakers I have ever tried. It is comfortable, it is flexible. Also the part of the sneaker that goes around your ankle, where the ankle notch is, it has no padding, and that actually often is better than a sneaker that does have padding, and I will probably address that later in this video. But as far as this style of sneaker, it's very good. I hope the company does not discontinue it, even though I've had to try hard to find a color of this style that I dislike the least, because the majority of their colors in this style are all very flamboyant, outlandish, and too colorful. This, I think, is a traditional design. I think this sneaker is made out of suede mostly, and as I have said already, suede is a horrible material to make any shoes out of, to make a sneaker out of. The front of this sneaker also, the nose, the tip of the sneaker, seems to have a rounded shape in a stout form. It isn't very pointed, and I do not like very pointed sneakers or shoes like a lot of women's shoes are designed. That is overdone, but when the tip of the shoe, the nose of the shoe or the sneaker is like this one, a little too rounded rather than a little more pointed, the symmetry is off, as I mentioned before. It seems it's for people with stunted toes. Of course, there are some people who need shoes or sneakers shaped that way too. I happen to like this brand also, but they also have not been coming out with designs that I like. This sneaker has a good appearance to it. It has good contour. The sole of the sneaker is designed so that up front it comes up against the tip of the sneaker. That has a good look to it, in my opinion. It's not like a bumper that covers most of the nose of the sneaker but is an odd color compared to the rest of the sneaker. Also the side of the sole is thin towards the front of the sneaker and gets thicker towards the back of the sneaker. It's done in a smooth transitional way. Often I don't like it when sneakers are very thick in the heel area because it makes it look like the sneaker is a hybrid of a high heel or a dress shoe and the sneaker, which is something I've said before about sneakers, the way they're designed. The construction and design of this sneaker also has something going for it in that the side of the sneaker has something of a piece of material that goes up to the tongue area, and it juts out into three little eyelets. Those are called webbed eyelets, and that kind of lacing system looks effective. It looks better than most other kinds of lacing systems that use webbed eyelets. The webbed eyelets are part of that material on the side, and the eyelets are thick rather than thin pieces of fabric. Yet what I dislike about this sneaker is the material itself. Overall, the material is flimsy. That piece of fabric on the side is like fox leather, and I don't like to use leather, by the way, but ultimately I'm not sure if it's genuine leather, but I don't like the feel of it. It's thick, but it's pretty much like suede. This sneaker does not have a good look to it. Need I say that it looks like it's trying to be a high heel and a sneaker? This sneaker doesn't have a very bad construction to it. However, there's too much of a contrast between the two shades of blue. The sole is too thick. It's designed to have a wavy pattern to it. That's way too fancy. Also, it has a slight curve right on the arch area. I think sneakers should look like their soles are flat on the ground. This looks like a hiking shoe. The baby blue color of the sole, the side of the sole, and the shoelaces, along with the black stripes on the side and the black bumper. That just has a tacky look to it. This looks like a part tap shoe, part hiking shoe. I don't like the color pink, by the way. I'm not sure what to make of this shoe. I'd like to say something about this sneaker. The brand actually makes some pretty good sneakers and athletic shoes, but if you look at this particular style, you'll notice that on the side of the sole, there's a triangular patch of black right at the area where your arch would be. And even though that is just a color on the side of the sole, it is meant to look as if the sneaker has a heel. Sneakers should not look like they have heels, in my opinion. Their soles should be flat on the ground. Dress shoes and regular shoes have heels. I often avoid buying sneakers manufactured by this company because they often have styles that have that triangular patch of black on the side of the sole. This sneaker, at least the sole is flat on the ground, but of course it looks very outlandish. I'm not sure if this is a brand called Keds. Decades ago, Keds used to advertise themselves on TV as sneakers that help you to run fast and jump high. And perhaps back then, in the 1970s, when more technological running shoes were not yet developed as today, perhaps they actually were some of the best possible sneakers to help you move and feel comfortable in. Other sneaker manufacturers and shoe manufacturers copied the design of the original Keds sneaker and added all kinds of embellishments or different features. This one may or may not be Keds. One thing good about this style of sneaker is up front near the toe area, it has part of the sole covers the tip of your toes. That's how it's designed, and that's good for protecting the tip of your toes when it's raining. And maybe other sneaker manufacturers ought to improve on a design like that. I wonder who would wear a sneaker that looks like this, though. These have a very bright these are a very bright yellow color. These sneakers are a very bright yellow color. I'd like to point out the eyelets, which are called webbed eyelets, as I mentioned before, or I might have mentioned before. They often are just pieces of fabric sewn to the sides, to the sides of the tongue area, and they are meant to tie your shoes. I don't think they work better than traditional laces. They don't seem to create the same amount of tension. It can depend on the design of the rest of the shoe. This shoe has a decent look, except for the black bumper and the bright yellow soles visible on the side. This might be a hiking shoe or a trail runner. I don't think it is of the best quality overall, even though the brand name is well known. What seems to be a good feature is the coating on the side. If you look carefully, you will notice triangular shapes on the side, which are the same color as the rest of the top of the shoe, but of a different texture. The top of the shoe might be a fabric material or some kind of tightly woven mesh material. The side of the shoe might be rubberized, or it might be of silicone or some other material. It seems to be to make the shoe water resistant, at least substantially. If that's what it actually is for, that is always a good idea. It seems that the coating should cover more of the surface area of the shoe. Of course, the coating could be to make the side of the shoe more rugged in case you're walking through wooded area and there are low-lying branches and thorns where you're walking. However, it would be a good idea if shoe manufacturers made sneakers or trail runners so as to be water resistant, and that is a difficult thing to do actually. Most manufacturers should try to make their styles so as to have some kind of coating like that, so that you can run or jog or walk or hike in some light rain without getting your feet wet. Such a sneaker would have to be carefully designed so that it has ventilation. Otherwise, your feet will get drenched in its own sweat. I read an online article. It was a website about equipment and clothes for outdoor adventures, and it said that actually waterproof boots or hiking shoes do not actually keep your feet dry, and that it's just an advertising gimmick for the manufacturers to say that their boots or their shoes are waterproof and will protect you. In reality, when it's really wet weather in the outdoors, it's hard to keep your feet dry. I would say it can depend how wet it is. There's a gray area regarding that, but I believe that when you have to cross a lake, when you have to be out in a downpour, waterproof boots are not really going to do the trick. You'll reach a point where water will get in the boots or through the boots or shoes. And that article I mentioned, it actually suggested you wear lighter shoes, sneakers even, perhaps some particularly rugged sneakers meant for trail running, but it's best not to burden yourself with very heavy, dense, bulky feeling footwear when it's really not going to work for you. And I think that's mostly true. Of course, it can depend if you're out in really cold weather and you need very dense boots or shoes for the cold and to prevent wetness as much as possible. But if you're hiking or outdoors in weather that's basically within a certain temperature, it's probably best to just wear regular sneakers or sneakers meant to do some running on trails or more rugged territory than just flat ground. But again, there should be more sneakers designed for water resistance, and manufacturers have to hit their mark regarding that. What I best recall is that I made an individual short video about this sneaker. The lacing system is such that the laces go clearly over your entire foot, over the top of your entire foot, and it seems that when you tighten your laces, since it covers more area of your foot, you're going to feel the tightness or the tension on the top of your foot. Perhaps the only good thing about this sneaker, perhaps, is that the eyelets that are on the side of the sneaker are wider than the laces. And often the eyelets, whether they're webbed eyelets or whether they're punched eyelets, the laces are always thicker than the eyelets, or so it seems. These sneakers have a lot going for them. The soles are flat on the ground, not like high heels. They have good contour to them. They seem to be the shape of the human foot. They have a good color to them. Blue is not my favorite color generally, but this shade of blue is not too light. And the soles are gray, which is probably the best color for soles, for the soles of sneakers. I have tried these sneakers though, and the upper material is flimsy and it's weak and thin. This is the same sneaker, different color, also different angle. This is how the shape of the shoe looks from the top. It does have the contour of the human foot. That's one good thing about it. Some sneakers have a sloppy contour like this. This one looks like it has been used for a while though. And again, sometimes some people need sneakers with different contours to them. And besides that, sometimes a sneaker can just lose its shape after a while and look sloppy, and that can be because of how much you may use the sneaker, how you use the sneaker, or simply because the sneaker isn't flexible, rugged, or durable enough. This is the same sneaker again. This one has white soles. This sneaker is called the Tanjun sneaker, by the way. That's the name of the style. The sole is designed so that it doesn't have very deep grooves or crevices. Some sneakers are designed with very elaborate and deep grooves, which is ridiculous. When you have to clean the soles of your sneakers, it is hard to impossible to clean out all the debris that's stuck in the crevices or the grooves on the soles. It seems that in general, sneakers are not designed to be cleaned, unless perhaps if you take them to the cleaners to be specially treated or recycled. The soles of this sneaker are among the very few I've ever seen that do not have deep grooves, and more sneakers ought to be designed that way. This sole has narrow and closely spaced grooves. They are in a squarish wavy pattern, and together they form what could be called a computerized geometric image of the human foot. But I doubt that it would enable you to get better traction, since a lot of the grooves are in a square shape or a rectangular shape or something of a diamond shape. They have corners to them, and corners are particularly hard to clean out. The dirt gets really wedged into any shape with a corner, any groove that's in a shape so as to have corners. So you have to wonder what the designer of this sole was thinking. The soles of this sneaker are not as bad as those of others. The grooves seem to be wide enough so that you don't have to use the point of a pin to maneuver into those crevices and dig out any dirt. I don't know if any extensive research has been done, but I doubt that the grooves on the soles of sneakers or shoes do that much, if anything, for making or creating or enabling traction as you walk or run on the ground. So it seems this does look like the kind of sneaker to use on the beach, but sand is comprised of many little granules just like dirt or soil is, and it has a consistency in that it just packs together and goes inside the grooves of the soles of your sneakers and basically stays there, and that defeats the purpose of traction from your grooves. A groove that's filled with sand or dirt or soil doesn't function as a groove that can enable gripping action on the ground. The idea with grooves on the soles of sneakers might be because of the idea with grooves on the wheels of a vehicle like a Jeep. A Jeep's wheels has grooves, but those grooves are wide and they're spaced apart in a way that enable better traction. That besides the fact that the wheels of a Jeep are large enough, and as they rotate, they create a momentum that enable traction on rugged terrain, better than the momentum of human running or walking can create using sneakers that have soles with very narrowly spaced grooves on them. The wheels of a Jeep can also get dirt and sand in its grooves, but it's not the same as when you get dirt and sand in the grooves of your sneakers. With the wheels of a Jeep, the spinning action propels a lot of that dirt out. You really can't do the same running or walking in your sneakers. The forces of physics and nature are different. And mainly, again, the grooves on the soles of your sneakers are not likely to give you a great advantage regarding traction. Again, I'm not sure how extensively that has been studied, but it just seems that grooves on the soles of sneakers are part of an advertising gimmick, just like when some manufacturers claim that their boots are waterproof. It really doesn't work as proclaimed. This looks like a hiking shoe or a hiking sneaker. It has white soles, which should be basically visible even though the background is also white. It seems to have prominent grooves on the soles. Now when it comes to grooves, grooves are indentations on the soles of sneakers or shoes. They have different shapes. However, some more things about that. These are line drawings of what grooves can look like on the soles of shoes. This would be a viewpoint from the side as the sole is downward. And a groove can have a triangular shape, which means that any object, dirt, rocks, would get into that groove and it would probably get lodged in the narrowest area of that triangular groove, which is the pinpoint area where the groove is smallest. That's the nature of a triangular shape. If the groove is square in shape, which some grooves are, then objects can also get stuck there, but there seems to be less of a likelihood anything that is larger than the dimensions, the outer dimensions of the groove, won't really get stuck there, and it should be easier to clean out. A groove sometimes is of a rounded shape like this. It seems that anything that gets stuck in there would be the easiest to clean. It doesn't have corners so that sand or dirt would pack into a narrow area. But I think that grooves are rarely made in this rounded shape. There can also be a variation of the kind of groove shapes that were just shown. Some grooves can be triangular, but they can be more narrow. That would probably be more of a problem when you have to clean them. Also, they can be square, but more of a rectangular shape, meaning that they're deeper and narrower. They can be a rounded shape, but more of an oval type of rounded shape. Again, that means deeper and narrower. in dimensions. Of course, sometimes a groove can really have a strange shape, like some kind of hectagon, septagon, polygon, whatever. I doubt any shoe manufacturer would make their soles that impractical, but who knows? And of course, when it comes to cleaning out grooves, it depends how wide they are besides how deep they are. Rounded grooves would seemingly be the best, also if they aren't so deep. This is a hiking shoe, or perhaps a shoe for general use that looks like a hiking shoe. It has a brand name, but I have seen generic brands in this design. This seems to be a popular style as far as the appearance. Strictly by looking at it though, if it is for hiking, I'm not sure how well it can serve that purpose. The upper part seems to be made of suede, or possibly it could also be synthetic leather or genuine leather. Now, the part of the shoe that would cover the top of the wearer's toes seems to be made out of a mesh material, and that is for ventilation. It serves a practical purpose, but it seems to possibly have a plush feel to it rather than a rugged feel to it. In the past, I have seen sneakers with mesh material sewn into that area that covers the top of the wearer's toes, and some mesh is made more rugged and more durable than other kinds of mesh. My experience is that if the mesh is made in the best possible way, it is even water resistant. But progressively, I don't see mesh when it's sewn onto shoes or sneakers that has a good construction and a good feel and works in the best possible way. Blue and gray are a good color combination. It could depend on the shade. This sneaker looks like it has metallic blue trim on what could be called the nose of the sneaker, and some other places on the sneaker. Metallic colors on sneakers, that's what makes them look like a Halloween costume. Same for the yellow highlights. There are other things about this sneaker though. This sneaker has eyelets that are placed so high on the upper part of the sneaker that they are actually on the sides of the sneaker, right where the ankle notches are. That's where your ankles would be as you wear the sneaker. It's an oddity in itself that after you run out of material to put eyelets on, that you would then put eyelets on the sides of the sneaker. If you lace your sneakers that far up, it would mean that you have particularly thin ankles, which is not likely. But what it could more likely mean is that when you flex your foot in the process of running or walking, you will feel the pressure of the upper material press against the bend point of your foot as you flex it. You could opt out of using the highest pair of eyelets, even the 2 highest pairs of eyelets or the 3 highest pairs of eyelets, in order to avoid feeling that tightness or that friction or that pressure of the upper part of the sneaker on the bend point of your upper foot, as I have found myself doing. But eyelets are spaced at certain intervals from each other. They're meant to be used in conjunction with each other. Some sneakers are designed so that the 2 highest pairs of eyelets are still at a distance from each other, that not to lace the highest pair is equivalent to not lacing the 2 or 3 highest pairs of eyelets on any other sneaker. I'm not even referring to basketball sneakers, which are constructed to have material that goes above your ankles. Also, if you do not lace your shoes entirely, what happens is that your laces will be too long, they will flap around, it will feel awkward, you could trip over them. Furthermore, shoelaces have what are known as aglets. That's the very tip of the shoelace. Sometimes the aglets are made out of a heavy material like metal. Sometimes it can be made of plastic or some kind of coating. If the aglet is heavy, that will create a greater tugging action on the knot so as to make it come undone. And I know that's referring to the small details involved. That could more likely happen with certain kinds of shoelaces, shoelaces made of certain materials. Rounded shoelaces probably come undone more often. You can think of a rounded shoelace as a fire hose that has water running through it, while a flat shoelace is like a fire hose that doesn't have water running through it. Because of the circumference, a rounded shoelace just doesn't adhere to itself as much as a flat shoelace would. And again, it would matter on the material. Some shoelaces are made out of a slippery or slick material like satin. And even if a flat shoelace were made out of the wrong material, it would come undone easily. Flat shoelaces normally stay tied better than round shoelaces. This one on this sneaker appears to have a waffle texture to it, which probably makes better adhesion when tied in a knot. But even though you may have to avoid using the highest placed eyelets of your sneakers, what can happen with that alternately is that when you walk or when you run, the heel part of your sneaker will not follow your heel, and it will flap like a slipper or a sandal. And if somebody is walking or running behind you and has a longer stride especially, that person's tip of their sneaker could come against the heel of your sneaker and cause your sneaker to completely come off of your foot, which is something I have experienced more than once. And though that could happen, even if you do have your sneakers completely laced, there is a particular risk of that if your sneakers are not laced tightly. But another thing, sometimes you want to be able to remove and put on your sneakers without unlacing them. Sometimes it's convenient, such as if you are at the doctor's office and you are going to be weighed on the scale. You are told to remove your shoes, and it's best if you can step out of and into your sneakers without bothering with unlacing and lacing them. It helps not to use the highest placed eyelets, but also, depending on the overall design of the sneaker, it might not be as effective as with other sneakers. Gusseted tongues are always good, so you don't have to hold the tongue to slip your foot into your sneaker. But depending on the sneaker's lacing system, it can be hard to lace your sneakers in a way that works best for you. Also, to say something about the collar of this sneaker. The collar is the part that goes completely around your ankle. It is padded so that it may be more comfortable. Sometimes if it's too padded, it can do the opposite. Padding is mostly or usually made of foam material. There are different kinds of foam. I do not know if memory foam is used. I guess sometimes it might be, but foam has resistance to it. It is not as if you're lying on a bed of foam. When the foam is around your ankle and you are moving, you are running, you are walking, you just may feel friction, you may feel tightness, you may feel that your ankles are constricted. Sometimes it's best when the padding around the collar of a sneaker isn't that bulky or thick. Sneakers are designed for a general population so that they satisfy most people's needs in footwear for active use, but there's a majority of people for whom the lacing system, the amount of padding, and the construction of the sneaker are not both comfortable and functional, or are neither comfortable or functional. This sneaker was shown previously on this video. This is a detail. It shows what could be called a reinforcement on the side of the sneaker. It has a company name spelled out across it. It also seems to act as a way for an extra eyelet to be attached to the side of the sneaker. That reinforcement could be just to have the name, the company name, on an obvious part of the sneaker, but since that webbed eyelet that's attached to the reinforcement is more to the side of the sneaker than the other webbed eyelets below it, it's meant to create more tension in that area when you tie your sneakers. The reinforcement appears to be made out of a rubber material, but as I have stated previously, the upper part of the sneaker, where the highest eyelets are, if that area is rigid or stiff, it will be uncomfortable or even painful when you flex your foot. That upper part of the sneaker should be as soft as possible. without being made of cheap or weak material. A better design, at least for certain sneakers, would be if that upper part of the sneaker where the highest placed eyelets are were actually designed to be lower on the front of your foot so that it does not even reach the point of access or the flex point of the top of your foot. Of course, some sneakers, depending on what they're for, whether they are for running, strictly for running, or if they're for trail running, they may need to be heavier, denser, they may need to cover more of your foot. Also, this sneaker appears to have a gusseted tongue. I think all sneakers should have gusseted tongues, but if it's not constructed right on the sneaker, it can also be uncomfortable. This sneaker's gusseted tongue seems to have a fold. You can see it right on the tongue area along the length of the sneaker where the tongue is. If that fold isn't constructed right, you can feel the bulkiness of the gusseted tongue on the top of your foot, especially when you tie your laces tightly. A gusseted tongue helps to prevent small pieces of glass or rocks or small objects from getting into your shoes. So I wonder why most sneakers are not designed with gusseted tongues. Again, they do need to be designed properly on the sneaker. It has to be the right material or combination of materials. The upper part of sneakers where you lace your sneakers, that needs to be given more consideration by designers and companies that manufacture sneakers. I like this style so much that I bought several pairs. I like the gray soles, I like the gray color, even though I didn't care much for the bright yellow fluorescent highlights. These sneakers were very comfortable, but after a while, the material didn't hold up. It developed a worn look to it only after a few months of being used. Also, something needs to be said about the lacing system. As you should be able to see, there is fancy stitching on the side, and it is such that small strings reach up to the eyelet area, but they serve no purpose other than just trying to be something aesthetic. If you have to remove your laces, then those small strings on the side also come undone. This is an example of that. This was a discarded pair that I photographed. It's the same style, same brand, but without the laces, and of course it looks far more used. So as you should be able to see, without the laces, those small strings on the side are only sewn halfway up. Let's go back to the better looking pair. And since those strings are only sewn halfway up, It's possible that while you're wearing these sneakers and walking or running along the road, and if there's a branch sticking out, a low-lying branch, the strings on the sneakers could get snagged. Of course, you could reason that the same could happen with your shoelaces, and still with those strings partially stitched to the side of the sneaker, it might present a greater element of risk to safety. This sneaker was on a mannequin's foot, and it does not have the conventional or perhaps a traditional type of collar. The part of the sneaker that goes around your ankle, the collar is more like that of a crew neck collar of a sweater or a shirt. And sneaker manufacturers have been making sneakers with this type of a collar that isn't padded, but is just like fabric material around your ankle, and in some ways that works better. It feels better. You don't feel the bulk of the sneaker's padded collar around your ankle. That's mostly good if you're doing yoga, and also if you're running. Of course, it could depend on what yoga poses you are doing, because if you have to lean your weight on the back of your ankles, it might feel better if there is some padding. And I have made a different video regarding that. This sneaker has eyelets that are designed so as not to be rounded, but as to be in a slit design, so that it holds your flat shoelaces in a way so that they cannot roll. If that actually is the purpose, and if it actually works, it just may not. The material of a shoelace, even if it's flat, it can find a way to bend and twist even in those slit eyelets. However, it seems it would be hard to get the aglet of the shoelace through an eyelet like that unless the eyelet stretches. Perhaps it's made out of rubber, or perhaps if the aglet of the shoelace is flat, or perhaps when the sneaker was manufactured, the sneaker was built completely around the shoelace, so that there's no way to remove the shoelace without cutting it or breaking it. Of course, that's unlikely, but you never know. And again, the aglet of the shoelace is that very tip of the shoelace that is hard, and you put it through the eyelet to lead the rest of the shoelace through all the eyelets. Okay, I don't think I need to say anything about clownish or outlandish appearances, do I? Same for this one.